Oh, um, that's going to be the first question.
Yes, ma'am.
Think of the Holy Land and the picture. Two different pictures come to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine the land that Jesus traveled in when he had his ministry, the places that he walked. I can kind of see that in my mind as I go back over what I read in the Bible. That's one image that I have. The second image I have is what I actually traveled when we visited there some maybe 5 years ago. I have a picture of that. So that's what I think of when I think of Israel. Is that the kind of answer you want?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Tell me about.
Would you want more than that?
Maybe a little.
Tell me what you're looking for.
Tell me about the end times.
That's going to be one of the questions? Okay. That's going to be one of them.
How do you see?
I thought you had them all written down. You're just going off the top of your
I have
head.
all written down, but I'm adding as I go a little bit too.
Okay, then let's just go.
All right, hang on one second. If we're gonna just go.
Now, to tell you about the end times trip, that's a whole book of Revelations. I mean, that's pages and pages.
You can go as much into detail as you want to go. No more, no less than what you want. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little bit intimidated by the end times question.
Why? You talk about it all the time.
I know, but it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of information. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is a short answer. It would be the Holy Land. And it's personal to me because in my heart it is holy, because it is probably the most important city to me as a Christian, because it's the area where Jesus grew up, where he was born, where he lived, where he ministered. I really think it's probably the most holy place in the whole world. And when my husband and I went there, maybe 5 years ago, you could sense that. You could almost sense the presence of God there. I do think it's interesting that it's not only the Holy Land to Christians, but also to Jews and to Muslims. I think of it as holy because so many of the X all that.
You can just keep going. I'm gonna listen to the whole.
Okay.
I'll pull out anything that's not right.
I think of it first of all when I imagine it. If I were to pull up pictures in my mind of Israel, I think first of all what would come to mind is so many stories in the Bible, and it would go way back in history. King David, and even before him and after him, but then mostly Jesus, that, his feet were touching that land when that story happened. And when I read those stories and bring them to life in my mind, his feet are on that land. But then too, when I was there and I walked on that land, just imagining Jesus there, it's all very holy to me. Yeah.
What What does Israel mean to you as a near lifelong Christian?
Well, I never thought anything about Israel until I was an adult. So I didn't grow up in church, so I don't remember ever even hearing about it or considering it, or the wars that were going on there.
June 5th, 1967.
And what happened in the 6-Day War?
Arab and Israeli forces clashed for the third time, June 5th to 10th, 1967, in what came to be called the 6-Day War or June War. In early 1967, Syria intensified its bombardment of Israeli villages from positions in the Golan Heights.
So what happened? Something real significant happened. Is that when Israel was declared a country, a nation?
That was in 1948.
That's when it was declared a nation. And then they captured some important piece of property in the 6-Day War. Something real significant and important happened.
But within the context of the 6-Day War, do you see that as part of a biblical prophecy?
Oh, let's don't talk about that.
Well, that's what the whole interview is.
Okay, so I didn't become a Christian until I was an adult. So Israel means nothing to me before that. I don't even remember ever thinking about it. I only knew one Jewish family growing up. And then it's interesting, after I became a Christian, a lot of very significant things I know happened in Israel and for the Jews, but I don't even remember those either. So the things that happened in the 40s and the 60s, I was alive for those. But when I go back in my memory, I don't even remember the news happening and those things happening. So I don't think I knew anything until I moved deeper into my Christian life and started really studying the Bible, and maybe teachers that I studied under started talking about Israel. And it might even...
Can I ask what would they say?
Yeah, just maybe they were starting to teach out of Revelations. And I remember there's a thing in the Bible that says pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and also something in the Bible that says we as Christians should stand behind Israel. And I'm really sorry I can't tell you where that Bible verse is.
You want me to go get your Bible?
Well, I didn't become a Christian until in my 20s. Really, as a young person, teenager, high school, even in college, I don't even remember ever thinking about Israel. Even after I became a Christian at 23, some very significant things happened for Israel in the 40s, again in the 60s. I don't even remember those things. The first time I remember really caring about Israel was after I started attending Bible studies, where teachers began, most likely in Bible studies that I had several, studying the book of Revelations. Again, these were Bible studies in the South being taught by Southern Christians. And I don't remember specifically, but I remember learning about Bible verses that said we were to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And then also learning, and it feels like I have always known this as a Christian, so for 50 years, that God would bless those who bless Israel, and that he would curse those who do not. And it's like I've just always known and believed that that is the reason the United States backs Israel, is because we as a country would be blessed if we supported Israel. And if we did not, we would be cursed as a nation. And I believe that very, very strongly, to the point that when here recently it's been debated whether we would support them or not, we have often said, oh my gosh, does that political leader not understand what would happen to us as a country if we do not support Israel? Now, I want to say real quickly, I am not a political person. If this interview was about politics, you could easily make me sound like a fool because I don't really want to be involved in politics. Everything that I believe about Israel, now I've forgotten the question, but is 100% based on what I think the Bible says. So I think a lot of people might be upset when I say that there's a Bible verse. Yeah, that Bible verse that I gave you is in Genesis 12, 2 through 3. And I think it's repeated. I've just always believed. I had lost my whole train of thought there.
No. So, real quick.
Yeah.
That answer you gave is exactly what I wanted to get this whole interview. You talked about the U.S. will be blessed if it supports Israel, cursed if it does not.
Yes.
And you believe that?
Absolutely.
And you say, now when you talk about the U.S. being blessed due to its support for Israel, does that mean rich in spirit? Does that mean spiritual blessings or otherwise? I really think the most basic thing that it means is that God will protect us as a nation. I don't think it necessarily means that we'll be a rich nation, even though we have been. I just think we will be protected. He'll look out for us in whatever ways he wants to, whether that's making sure that we receive wisdom, making sure that we are not invaded or attacked. Again, I'm not very political, but if we support Israel, he will look out for us. So, yes, I absolutely believe that. And I know that a lot of people, when they hear me say that we are blessed if we bless Israel, it makes people upset. But I cannot back off of that because the Bible says that. And when you say we are blessed if we bless Israel, what does us blessing Israel look like?
Sticking up for it, supporting it being a state, like when Trump became the president and said, we're going to put our embassy there, we're going to declare it a nation. That wasn't what he did. What did he do, Tripp?
He moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem.
Yes, when he did that, don't make me sound stupid on this.
No, listen, I just want to...
So,
I need you to know that.
So when President Trump moved the embassy there, I was thrilled to death. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Can you say that again? Because I was interrupting you a little bit.
Okay. So, when President Trump moved the embassy there to Jerusalem, I was absolutely thrilled. That, to me, was the United States supporting Israel. And, yeah.
And what about
because that was us blessing Israel, standing behind Israel. And whenever we give them arms and give them money in the war, that to me is America standing behind Israel. Now, I do want to say, again, I'm not political, but this whole situation with Gaza, I'm conflicted with that. It absolutely breaks my heart. It breaks my heart what is happening to those people. So I can't even talk about that. The whole thing that they're being bombed and bombed and bombed. I can't make sense of that. I don't understand that. All I know is I stand behind Israel because the Bible tells me to. I wish they weren't bombing Gaza. I wish those people weren't dying. I wish the war would end. And I can't make those two things fit together. Does that make sense? No. But a lot of things that, it's the same kind of thing when a terrible hurricane hits the coast of Florida and a lot of people die and a lot of good people die and a lot of good people's property gets ruined. And I know that God could, with the snap of a finger, make that end. I don't understand that, but I still love him and I still trust him. And that doesn't make sense to me, but I'm good with that. So there you go.
The country.
Well, I really can't answer that because I've never been a Christian living anywhere but the South. So I don't really know how to answer that. I love that I'm a Christian in the South. I'm happy that I live in the Bible Belt. I have a really, really good friend who lives in Las Vegas. And so I've heard a little bit what that's like, to try and find Christians in her neighborhood, and she couldn't. That made me really sad because in any neighborhood I've ever lived in, I can find other Christians who believe like me very, very easily.
You likely just go the next door down.
It's easy. So that makes me happy to find Christians who are Bible-believing Christians, even in other denominations, is very, very easy. Here in Jackson, Tennessee, I was recently in a Bible study for 2 years that was just kind of put together with a group of people from my gym, and they were from all different churches, different Christian denominations. And it was just funny. Here we are in Tennessee. We come from all these different Christian denominations, but we believe 80% of the same things.
And would you say the vast majority of your company, when you're in situations like that, back Israel, and that you feel they reliably back Israel in the same way you do?
Yes. And what brought us together, though, was a particular thing that we were studying. Now, we never discussed politics. We never discussed the election that was coming up because we didn't want to talk about things that would divide us. We talked about the things that we agreed on, which was the love of Jesus and how to love each other. The Bible study was on walking in love, and we all agreed on that, which really is the most important thing in the world. Yeah. So, loving your enemy, being kind. And so, yeah. Am I being taped? Okay. I was actually born in Boston, Massachusetts, because my father was in school there. I moved when I was 6 years old to North Carolina. But once I got married, I moved to Georgia and lived there for a whole bunch of years. And then 7 years ago, when I was about 70, I moved here to Tennessee.
But your family's from North Carolina?
Yes, my family's from North Carolina. Yes.
Okay.
Both sides of my family. And my husband's family's from North Carolina. So our roots are all in North Carolina. Yep. So do you want to ask me about what I believe about Revelations and why I'll try to answer that?
Yes.
Well, okay, to ask me about what I believe about Israel and the end of the world, Revelations, the end times, that's a huge question, and I could probably teach a Bible study lesson on that would last several months. And so I'll just hit a few. I'm not even looking, and I prefer to speak on things like that using notes so I can be accurate. But Israel, I believe, will be hugely important in the end of the world. Some of the things I believe will happen is that it will be attacked by a lot of the Arab nations. There is going to be something pretty miraculous that happens. I can't remember the way Revelations explains this, but kind of miraculously it will be saved, and then Jerusalem is where Jesus will. Oh, yeah, one of the things that I think a lot of people do not believe is that the temple will be rebuilt right where it was built twice before, which is where the Dome of the Rock now stands. There's prophecy about that in the Bible, and that is where Jesus will return, and he will set up his kingdom in Jerusalem, and he will reign for 1,000 years, and there will be complete and beautiful peace on the earth for 1,000 years. And Jerusalem will be the center of all of that, and everybody alive at the time, people will come back with him to the earth, and all the people who live on the earth will live in peace. So Jerusalem there will be a huge war that takes place. It even says where that will be. You can go and see that valley where the Battle of Armageddon will take place. There'll be a huge battle that happens right there. So if you go on a Christian tour, they will take you and show you where that actual battle will take place. But yep, Jerusalem will be, all eyes will be on Jerusalem at the end of the world. And it is amazing to me that another thing about Israel that's amazing to me is it's such a tiny little country, and that it has survived so much, and it's so little, such a tiny little country. But I have very deep love in my heart for Jewish people, for all that they have. Oh, and another thing is that I do believe that Christianity grew out of Judaism. I do believe in a spiritual sense Christians are related to the Jews in a spiritual sense, and we owe them what we believe we owe to their beliefs. And I also believe that so much of what they believe is symbolical and points towards Christ. Yep. So much of our heritage grows out of what they believe. We're very deeply tied to them. very deeply tied to Israel. And here's another thing that Tripp, you and I have talked about very often that I do want to talk about. So when you talk about the nation of Israel and you talk about Palestine, I do believe when you look at the Bible and you look to find the borders of when God said to the Jews, here's your promised land, here's the land that I am giving to you. I've recently come to understand there are like maybe 5 different borders that are given. It's not exactly clear and repeated the same way every time, but it does include what now is Palestine that was given to the Jews. So I think maybe that might be the reason Israel feels so justified in fighting for that territory. But only because of that, I do believe that the nation of Israel should have that land, which includes the territory of Palestine, even the part that they at one time agreed to give to Palestine.
The West Bank.
Yeah, but I don't agree that all the Palestinians, I think the Palestinians should be able to live there. And I mean, this is idealistic, I know. My wish would be that they would all just live in peace, and the people who live there could keep their homes, and the people, I mean, I know it's not going to happen, but that no one would be displaced. Everybody could just stay where they are, and I do believe it should be the nation of Israel, but that everybody would love each other, and everybody could stay right where they are, and everybody would live happily ever after and love each other in a world that it's never going to be like that. Does that make sense? Yeah, I don't want there to be war. I don't want there to be hatred, and yeah, it would just work out. I know that's naive, but...
Are you ready to switch gears a little bit?
Sure.
Do you...
I don't...
Could you actually move it up a little bit? There we go. That's good. Thank you.
I'm not real sure how to answer. That's a really complex question, because maybe 15 years ago it was more of a South and outside of the South type thing. Now I almost think it's more of a generational thing. I think even within the South, I often talk to people that I don't think understand anymore.
Do you think I understand?
More than you used to.
What is it that I understand, you think?
I talk to a lot of people of your generation that it's like they've discounted God. And a lot of times I feel like it's there. And I'm not talking about you, Tripp. I'm talking about other people that I've talked to, but I feel like they're so far removed from what I believe, and probably they just think I'm old and out of date, and they're not even going to give me a chance, and so it's not worth even trying to debate it. And so, yeah, I see that now in the South a lot more than I wish I did, and I can't imagine how it is. Like my sister-in-law talking about her son living in the state of Washington now. Yeah, I mean, I think you're unique because you are very open-minded, and I like talking to you because you listen and you're pretty calm about most things, and I feel respected by you and that you'll hear me, even when I a lot of times don't give you the same respect. But it scares me. It scares me that I see so much unbelief coming up behind our generation. I do think it's kind of prophesied as well. Yeah, that there'll be more and more unbelief as we get closer and closer toward the end.
Do you feel that we've begun to see any of what's prophesied today?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
But every generation does. I'm always reminded of that, like talking to some of my children, not my grandchildren, but my children. When I say I really believe we're getting closer and closer to the end of the world because, there's so much war and the weather's just going crazy. All of those things are in prophecy. And then the diseases that there's no cure for, and it's just escalating. And the answer back from some of my children is they say that in every single generation, and they do, but I think every generation is just escalating more and more. We're sliding down a very slippery slope, and I just don't know when we're going to hit bottom, but we're headed there. And one of the things that really, really scares me is where America's headed.
Tell me more.
I just feel like we've lost our moral compass. Once, just growing up, even though I wasn't a Christian, I grew up in a family that didn't go to church, really. But the world, our country was just, so I'm talking about, I really grew up in the 50s. I was born in 1947, so the decade of the 50s, was when I was in elementary school. And let's see, so I graduated from high school in 1965. So that was it was all before the Vietnam War. The world felt, now remember, I didn't know where there didn't seem to be any racism in my world, because I'm sure the black people were aware of racism, but we didn't, in the white world, we weren't aware of it yet. It hadn't been brought to the, do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm not trying to, I understand that's the world you lived in.
Yeah.
But you really, you don't feel the white world was aware of racism at all?
It wasn't a part of our world, really, because there were, aside from black people working for you, you just didn't bump into it. Black people weren't really where you were. They weren't in your school. They weren't in your church. They weren't in your neighborhood. No. Until it got brought to the surface and you were made aware of it. No. But that's definitely started in the 60s. Mm-hmm. Definitely. And that's when I became aware of it. I remember I was in high school. So, yeah, that's really a whole nother subject. But in my world, I don't think in a black person's world. It would be interesting for me to sit down with a black person my age and compare notes. But my world in those years, the world seemed safe and happy in the 50s. And so what was I talking about? What was my point?
You said that our country's on a slippery slope.
Yeah. So America was aside from racism, it seemed very moral. And maybe it wasn't. Maybe men were cheating on their husbands. Maybe children were being abused. Maybe all that was happening, but we we sure didn't talk about it, and we didn't know about it, and it wasn't in the news. So you didn't know that presidents were doing terrible things, that legislators and presidents, like you didn't know Eisenhower had a mistress. None of that was in the newspapers. You heard about it, just wasn't the world like it is now. Everything was, those things weren't broadcast to the public. Mothers and fathers didn't get divorced. Definitely you didn't hear about child abuse. So the world seemed, our country seemed safe. I just grew up in a world that seemed safe. In my world. Just my world. And so now my children growing up it didn't feel that way. And America has lost its moral compass, and there's much more crime and horribleness. And, I don't want to really get off on that, but there's no doubt America has lost its moral compass, and I really think we're heading very much to a place where we're probably going to end up, maybe in your lifetime, but I think definitely in the next generation's lifetime, where America will be less and less of a power in the world.
It is today.
Yeah, but less and less and less. I remember one of my Bible teachers way back when I was in my 20s saying that when he studied the Bible from his perspective, now he was just it was just him and his view. He said he saw the United States having no part in the end of the world, that it would have nothing. It would just be, he said he kind of imagined, now he wasn't trying to prophesy or anything, but he said there was one Bible verse that made him think, it said something about hiding under the wings of an eagle. And he said he felt like possibly the only part America would play was that it might be a place for people hiding from whatever countries were in power. They would go to America to hide. And America would have no political might, no power, no place in the world. It would have fallen.
What role do you think America will play in the other world?
I think there's a real good possibility we'll be taken over and defeated.
Can you say that whole thing again?
I just think there's a very real possibility America as a nation might not exist anymore at the end. Because I read in the Bible about what happened to Israel. They came into the promised land under the leadership first of Moses. They entered the promised land under the leadership of Joshua, and as long as he was in charge, they were doing what God wanted them to do. They were flourishing. And at the death of Joshua, they were heading downhill, and they never recovered because they were no longer obeying God. And within a couple of 100 years, they were overrun by first the Babylonians and then the Assyrians, and then they were no more, except for just a little remnant. And that process took 350 years. And when I read that history in the Old Testament and what happened to them, I see America. I see America. And I've got it written all in the notes when it talks about what they were doing, how they were living. I've got written all in the notes in my Bible, USA, USA.
And where is this?
Where is it?
In the Bible.
Oh, in the Old Testament, just all of Genesis, well, not Genesis, not Exodus, but I guess Judges. Well, it's from the time that they enter the Holy Land, and right after Joshua dies. It's from that point until in the Bible when the Babylonians and the Assyrians, all of it's in the Old Testament, and it's from the time Joshua dies until they're taken into exile, the southern part of Israel. First of all, the northern part is overrun and taken into slavery by the Babylonians, and then the southern kingdom of Israel, or Judah, is run over and taken captive by the Assyrians. And I think it's a 350-year period from their most glorious days to their total defeat, 350 years. And all in the margins of my Bible, I just read it and I think, this is our country, this is our country, this is what we're doing. Yep. So, anyway, that is totally off topic of what you're doing. Okay.
Everything we've touched on is what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So, how does that relate? I feel like, so you asked about the South. I feel like I am in the South. I am in great company. I can go just about anywhere in these, especially the Deep South, excluding Florida, and easily find a group of people that believe like I do. Outside of that, no. Outside of just the whole Deep South. So I'm talking Georgia, probably South Carolina, well, Tennessee, maybe Kentucky. I would question North Carolina. You just look at the elections and those people who voted for Trump. You just look at that. I guess we old rednecks, that's where you need to look. But on into Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, all of that. I could easily just say, hey, let's have a Bible study of all those people who believe the Bible like me. And I'd have no trouble. But you move out of that, and I don't know, it's interesting. And honestly, I could go into a group of black people and find tons of people who believe like me. Their roots are the same. It's interesting. Yeah, you get now Midwest is a lot like the South. But you go up north and you get out west and it's really different. And I was talking recently with my cousin when I went up to visit her in North Carolina, and she said, I do not open my mouth anymore. She said, none of my friends that I grew up with believe the way I do. Not anybody. Amen. I'm done.
You done?
Yeah, is that all you want?